Hey everybody, welcome back. So, have you ever, I don't know, with this new function on the iPhones, have you guys ever put like a voice text or a voice message out to somebody and you're just talking and you're, I don't know, 10 minutes into it and you look down and the damn thing has stopped? You're like, shit. I just did that. I just recorded an entire or 20 minutes of a thing for you guys and somehow or another it didn't go through. So I'm in that kind of revved up moment of like, damn it, I have to do it all over again, but I'm going to try. So today I want to talk about, the D in bind. For those of you that are new to the community, you might not know that this is a relatively new term in the last couple of years. And if you're not new to the community, then you saw the development of this. And, I really understand and agree with a lot of the ideas of why they were trying to come up with a new term that moved away from the word withdrawal. Was one of the main ideas, I think, was really to kind of begin to pull it out of the world of addiction. Withdrawal, that word tends to prompt people to think about addicts. And it didn't really make a ton of sense because, in fact, it led to a lot of further gaslighting because you'd hear doctors often say, well, it's long out of your system. You haven't been on benzos in 6 months. Or the withdrawal will only last, 2 weeks, when we know that for many people that have been bit by this, that's just not the case. And so the purpose was to kind of get a little bit more specific and be able to speak to this differently and to the specific ways in which benzodiazepines and Z drugs affect the neurochemistry. And so benzo-induced neurological dysfunction. But as I've done a little bit more, started to get into a little bit more coaching now and opened my private practice up to a few slots of people that are dealing with medication discontinuation syndromes and bind and trying to get back into their lives alongside sometimes debilitating and certainly life-altering and challenging symptoms. What I keep hearing people talk about are a couple things. One is the word damage. They seem to like flock to the word damage and be afraid of damage. And when I think of damage, I think about something permanent, organic, structural. And I personally don't agree with that, and I'll come back to that in a second. But the second thing I'll also hear people talk about is, all the different ways this is coming up, and well, this can't be, bind. This is my adrenal fatigue, or this can't be bind. This is, my hormone dysfunction. This can't be bind. This is, this has got to be a chronic pain condition. This has got to be fibromyalgia. This has got to be, all these different things. And so, again, I don't like the word damage. Now, does that mean that I don't think that anybody could experience damage from long-term and potentially permanent damage? I'm sure they could. I mean, but I'm speaking to the majority of us going through this, the larger majority of us, by the way, going through this. Do I think there can be outliers? Sure. I mean, you hear me talk about, several thousands of people die every year from taking aspirin. If you, I don't know, I just bought a potato peeler the other day and it had a warning label on it about, I don't know, not sticking it in my eye or something. And I'm like, why the hell would this warn me not to stick it in my eye? It's because somebody probably stuck the potato peeler in their eye. I don't know why they would do that, or why does my, fresh smelling toilet bowl cleaner tell me not to drink it? Because I guess somebody did. Maybe a kid, or maybe somebody who thought, wow, that smells good. Let me just try a taste of this. And my point is that all kinds of things can cause damage and can be a problem, right? Any tool can become a weapon. Any product can work against us, right? So do I think that it's possible? Yeah, I do, but I don't think it's the majority of us by a long shot. And the word D, the letter D in bind is for dysfunction. And I like that, but I'm going to go one step further with it. And this is not to change the terminology, because God knows we don't need more terms. In fact, I don't like labels at all. But when I think about the D in terms of what's really happening, and I stay away from the structural piece of things, I'm sure it's possible, but I really don't think we're dealing with structural, organic damage as a result of this. I do think, as you've heard me say many, many times, that we are a neurochemical shitstorm that's been brought on by this kind of chemical assault. And so the D for me, when I think about it, stands for distress, dysregulation, and disordered neurochemistry. That's how I think about the D in bind. And going back to my point about we don't have 100 problems, we have one problem. If, you've heard me talk about before that and I focus on the psychological aspects of how to cope with this. And I'll talk about, you have to decide that this is a disordered neurochemistry, right? You have to make that decision. Because if you can make that decision, then everything else that's going on can kind of land in that bucket. Now, that doesn't mean that if you're going through this for several years, that age-related things, other related things, that this can't, spurn off other processes that you might want to go get checked out. But a lot of times we get too focused on the symptom du jour, the symptom this month, this week, this year. My teeth hurt, my eyes are blurry, I'm having weird intrusive thoughts. Do I have OCD now? I feel depressed. I have chronic pain. I have fibromyalgia. I have neuropathy. I have all these different things, right? I have dizziness. I'm not disputing that you're having these things by no means. And I've said this over and over again. I'm not saying this is in your head. What I'm saying is that we can make ourselves crazy and we can keep the process in a worse state by chasing a million rabbits, right? Versus recognizing we've got one major problem, which is a very disordered neurochemical shitstorm. So I'm just going to get a little bit like Bill Nye the Science Guy here for a second and just try to do a little bit of a basic job on why I think this is important and why. And again, this is just how I look at it. You can choose to take this or you can choose to leave it, but this is how I've come to understand it. And what helps me and what has, I think, helped me the most is recognizing that my nervous system, which is highly complex, you've heard me talk about it as the electrical grid of our entire body, runs the show inside and out, top to bottom, head to toe, and it's a thumbprint. So the way my nervous system operates is like nobody else's nervous system. Does not mean that there's not some commonalities to things potentially or some patterns potentially, but it does mean that there's no formula or no right or wrong way to do this, and so much of this is trial and error. And that's the good news and the bad news of this. So let's just talk a little bit about the nervous system in general, because up until we went through this, unless you were studying the nervous system or you were studying to be a neurologist, and quite frankly, even in all my graduate training in psychotropics and psychology and all of that, I got very little training on the nervous system, which is a damn shame because quite frankly, now looking back over my 28-year career, half of what I was treating were neurological issues as it related to neurochemistry, right? Neurochemistry is neurology. Yes, there are psychiatric conditions and psychiatric symptoms that come as a result of disordered neurochemistry. 100%. That's what we're dealing with right now. So it's a shame that like the nervous system kind of it just doesn't get really talked about. So again, the electrical grid of our bodies, and it's made up of literally billions of specialized cells called neurons. Okay, and the job of these specialized cells is to communicate to each other and to communicate to our muscles and to our glands and to keep our body moving. And it's the transmission of this information that allows us to do everything from regulate our temperature to breathing normally, to regulating our blood pressure, to transmitting, our senses. Like, what am I taking in visually? What am I taking in orally? What am I taking in through my skin? What am I taking in through my ears? How am I interfacing with the elements of the world, and how is my body responding? Why can I be cold when I get in the pool, but eventually I kind of adapt to that? My body's working constantly to take in all kinds of information within the walls of my body, and from the external world. And it does this through this transmission of from neuron to neuron. Well, how does that information get passed through? It gets passed through via neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are basically chemicals that are released from one neuron to communicate with another neuron and the muscles and the glands and the rest of the body. And it transmits and it converts those signals in the cells. And so it basically patches through. So you've heard me talk about, and I'm going to really use this today, the analogy or metaphor, I can never remember what it is, of this operator who's sitting in front of this huge grid, right? And if you're too young to know about this, look it up, but I was too young. But if you think about it like an old-timey operator, and their whole job is to patch through a call that's coming in to its recipient, right? So here I am, I'm trying to call Sally Jones at some big business in Manhattan, I don't know, 70 years ago. And there's Oliver, the operator, sitting in this giant room. And I call in and he takes my information. Can I please speak to Sally Jones? I've got to get her a message that, there's a fire in her kitchen. Okay. And that operator's got to then take my call and patch me through to Sally Jones so that I can actually deliver the message and she can receive the message and decide what she's going to do about it. That's how our body is working constantly, all day, every day, asleep and awake. It is taking in information and it is transmitting it, and it is going from stimulus, I've got something to say to Sally Jones, to the response of Sally Jones, and that process in between. But what happens, so again, these neurotransmitters, let's talk about neurotransmitters for a second. So the neurotransmitters is the communication. They're the cells that communicate. And there's hundreds of them. Okay, so it's not just GABA and glutamate. I get tired of this because I feel like we are reducing ourselves down to two pieces of neurochemistry. And in some ways, I think we're gaslighting ourselves by doing that, because that's how simplistic the doctors want to make it, right? Like, just take the salt out of the soup. Let's just remove that Xanax from your body. And, what's your problem? Why are you acting so weird? That must be your anxiety. That must be that old OCD. I had somebody the other day, 60 years old, get diagnosed with bipolar. Wow, I want to meet her. I want to meet that rare soul, that new kind of bipolar that shows up randomly when you're 60. Come on. I mean, it just gets ridiculous. So let's think about these neurotransmitters. Obviously, we know about GABA and glutamate. GABA being the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter in our body, glutamate being the primary excitatory neurotransmitter in our body. These two things need to be in some degree of balance in order for there to be proper neurology and proper neurofunctioning, right? We know that these two things are probably not in balance, but they don't exist in a vacuum. So you've got things like acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter that's most highly correlated with Alzheimer's disease. GABA and glutamate are most highly associated with seizures and epilepsy. Dopamine is most highly associated with Parkinson's. You've got serotonin, mood. You've got glycine, highly antioxidant, anti-inflammatory neurotransmitter. You've got histamine, endorphins. All of the amino acids that you can think of, those are all neurotransmitters, and they're the most abundant neurotransmitters in our body. And so some of these we know a little better than others. We talk a lot about serotonin. We talk a lot in this world about GABA and glutamate. Certainly we've come to understand something about dopamine. We recognize now that we've got a problem going on, for example, with dopamine in terms of, this screen time and instant gratification. And we're getting these dopamine hits. And as a result, we've got a world of people that are more lonely and sad, despite being more connected than ever before, right? Because in some ways there's these dopamine hits that they're taking, and it's wearing things down. It's not working as it's supposed to. And so you're seeing now all of these problems that play out. But anyway, acetylcholine, GABA, glutamate, dopamine, serotonin, glycine, histamine, endorphins, all the amino acids, right? And all of this is to, again, create an effective communication, an efficient communication between these neuronal cells so that we can have normal functioning of our central and peripheral nervous system. The central and peripheral nervous system run the whole show. Okay, so again, really important to kind of think about this and to think about when I talk about it being a neurochemical shitstorm, what I want you to imagine. Let me add one more thing before I go into the analogy that I want to use. The other things we probably have never thought much about, but again are part of this process, are the sodium and the potassium and the calcium channels that are part of these cells, these ions that open and close the cells to allow for the information to come through. So again, you'll hear things about calcium channels, sodium channels, potassium channels. These are the channels that, again, have to work efficiently and effectively and open and close so that the function is carried out. You know, I want to calm down. Okay, I'm going to send this message of calm, and it comes through, and hopefully everything's working, and the cell gets the message, and I begin to calm down, or I begin to move into fight or flight mode. I begin to, whatever it is. So again, we are not so simplistic. We are much more complex, and that is not bad news. It's good news, because this neurochemistry, it knows what to do. It has gotten wildly dysregulated. We are like giant snow globes that somebody picked up and shook, not once, but a million times, right? And the problem is, what I work with people on and what I had to learn for myself was, okay, I'm a snow globe that had this shit shook out of me, and I need to sit still. And this doesn't mean I need to lay in my bed and stare at walls and worry, because, by the way, laying there worrying and ruminating and going down rabbit holes and freaking myself out is shaking the snow globe. I may not be riding a roller coaster, okay? I may not be in a concert with 70,000 people, but I'm still shaking the snow globe when I wake up and start going down the rabbit holes of what if. And I know, right now, specifically in the community, things are tough, and a lot of people are having a lot of hard times. What if I don't get better? What if I'm one of those that just, stay stuck? What if this comes back and gets me years later? What if? And we're shaking the snow globe. So we have to, and what I work with people on is, what are the things we can do to not make this work? We have to learn how to stop shaking our own snow globes. Those what ifs feel automatic, so they feel like they're being done to us, but they're not being done to us. They're patterns of thought and behavior that are so entrenched because we got so freaked out and scared, and rightly so, that it feels automatic to stay, deer in the headlights, going down rabbit holes and being focused on the what if this is actually adrenal fatigue? What if this is actually fibromyalgia? What if I never get better? What if this is this? What if this is that? What if this is brain damage? What if I never get better? What if I can never see? Oh my God. And we're shaking our own snow globes. So let's go back to this idea of this highly complex system of 7 trillion nerves, billions of neurons, these cells that are meant to communicate efficiently, right? And they need the process to go from me calling into that switchboard to talk to Sally Jones about the fire in her kitchen, okay? I need for there to be a process for that to happen, right? I need that operator to properly connect me to Miss Jones so that I can then deliver the message, right? So I want you to imagine this guy like Oliver, the operator, let's call him, and he's sitting at this giant switchboard, and all these calls start coming in, and he starts getting frazzled and overwhelmed, and the calls are coming in now kind of at a frantic pace, and he's getting so overworked and so confused, and he's getting one message, and all of a sudden he's connecting my message to Sally Jones, but now I'm delivering to some dude in China, and the message I'm getting is from some guy in Russia about, his sink, and you're getting some message from somebody in, I don't know, Australia who's saying, come on out for a barbecue tonight. Everything is going haywire. And this poor Oliver, the operator, is sitting there frazzled and overwhelmed. You can imagine this switchboard is kind of like firing off sparks, and no messages are getting through. Occasionally, he gets it right. Maybe we call that a window. When the call comes in and it gets transmitted properly and it gets delivered to its recipient properly, right? But this is true all the time. So imagine, we can even think about it like, forget the switchboard. Think about even in your own family or friends before this even happened. You have people in your life, right, that just get you. You don't even maybe you don't even have to say much. You certainly don't have to spell things out for people. They read your tone right. They know you, they get you. You make sense to them, they make sense to you. And the relationship happens smoothly. The communication occurs smoothly. Then you have those people in your inner circle, or sometimes not, that no matter how clear you try to be, it's like you're banging your head against a wall. It's like you're trying to cram a triangle into a square. No matter what you try to do, the message is not being received. Okay? And so what's happening to us is not that we're brain damaged. It is not that our nervous system is going to be permanently damaged. It is that for some period of time, our neurochemistry has gone haywire. And that neurochemistry is responsible for everything. So if you have POTS, okay, it's a real thing. I get it. And it's also a product of neuronal activity and proper neuronal transmission of data to be able to provide certain functions. And when all of that is potentially going haywire, because again, somebody somewhere thought it was a brilliant idea and that you could possibly, reach in and take out salt from a stew and there be no ramifications, or that was even possible, and it's not. So I really want you to think about the D in bind. I want you to think about, again, for me, I like to think about it as a dysregulation. My body's dysregulated, and my poor little operator, Oliver, is sitting there, and he is just, sitting in front of this switchboard, and he's trying so hard to get, the calls to the right recipients. But he is just, batting, he basically, for every one that he gets right, he gets 100 wrong, and he's just patching me through to random people, and I'm having bizarre conversations with, I don't even know what the hell's going on, and my past, is suddenly coming up. I'm suddenly talking to somebody about when I was in 3rd grade, and then all of a sudden I'm talking about the future, and the next thing I know, I'm thinking about something when I was 8, and the next thing I know, I'm afraid I'm gonna have a weird reaction to this, thing that I might eat down the road. I mean, who knows? But I think about Oliver the operator in there, frazzled and overwhelmed, cannot keep up. Sparks are coming off the switchboard, and I need to get some relief to Oliver. Okay? So how do I bring some relief to Oliver? That's what I work on. How do I set the snow globe down and not do any further harm, and allow my nervous system to settle while I don't do certain processes that feel automatic that are actually shaking the snow globe. Rumination feels automatic, okay? Because our threat response system, our limbic system, which is a huge part of this entire nervous system that I'm talking about, has gone haywire. My threat response system is haywire, just like everything else. So I'm screaming danger, danger, danger. We feel fear, irrational fear of everything, but it feels totally rational. It feels totally real. And so we begin to ruminate, try to problem solve, and what about this, and what about this, and we overthink things, and we're just making Oliver more frazzled, more tired, and we keep shaking the snow globe. So I wanted to come on and not complicate this further, but actually say, in thinking about it as a neurochemical shitstorm, and thinking about how to leave the snow globe alone and to help Oliver out, I wanted to recognize that this is not simply a GABA and a glutamate issue. And this is also not 100 beasts that we have to slay. That's why when you heard me talk about that acronym DEAL, DEAL, decide, evoke, allow, and live, the decide was, I'm making the decision to realize that my nervous system is dysregulated. That for some people that's tinnitus, for other people that's digestive issues, for some people it's POTS-like issues, for some people it's nerve pain, for some people it's terrible head pain, for other people it's brain issues where they feel brain zaps and brain squigglies, for other people it's insomnia, for other people it's all of the above. I mean, again, we could list all of the different ways because the nervous system runs the show. It affects our immune system, it affects our respiratory system, it affects our cardiovascular system, all of our sensory organs, our skin. And again, these neurotransmitters, the main ones that I named, are just, those are just 10 of hundreds of a very complex chemical soup, right? That, we've stuck a live wire in and it's lit up. And that poor nervous system, that's on fire, that's revved up, that's shooting off all these misfires, and it's, all these weird calls are coming into Oliver, and Oliver's doing his best to try to field these calls, but they're coming in, rather than one at a time, they're coming in 1,000 at a moment. And so some of those calls are getting through, and most of them are not. And we need to work on deciding that this is a nervous system gone haywire, so that we can evoke the right attitude. The attitude has to be somewhat irrelevant. I cannot give my full frontal attention to every little thought, feeling, or sensation that comes up in this system that has gone haywire. I will drive myself crazy. And I need to evoke a non-engagement response, like leave it alone, let it burn, let the clown have his circus. It is what it is. This too shall pass. Whatever it is, and the non-engagement response is the reminder that we have decided what this is. That we have decided that we have a nervous system that's acting up. We can't completely get out of its way because it's running our body. But we can do our best to step to the side of it. We can allow the thoughts, feelings, and sensations to be there. We can try to live our life as best we can. We can do whatever we can to try to win the Academy Award for playing ourselves on any given moment. And I get that some days that's just making breakfast. Other days it's taking a shower. Maybe some days it's going to work. Maybe some days it's you can do more. You can bring all, I used to call them scary and shitty, my little symptoms, right? Bring them with you. But I wanted to come in and really speak to this because, again, I keep hearing about damage. I don't like that word. And I keep hearing about, but now it's this, and now it's this, and now it's this. We can talk about that. But what we have to recognize, it's just one more head of the beast. It's just a beast with 100 heads. It's not 100 beasts. Anyway, guys, I hope this was helpful. Take care.